to another edition of Get the Life You Love. Today I've got a very good friend of mine, Ali Campbell, who's known as Mr. Fix-It. He's a celebrity life coach, and today he's actually in LA, so I'm not sure how the quality is going to be on the recording that we're going to do, but we'll see how we get on. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the fabulous Ali Campbell. So, how's LA?
Well, it kind of fits with your title, Phil. Get the life you love. What's not to love? You know, it's lovely actually, and it's once you just for me, once I make that head adjustment to the fact that it's not London with sunshine or Glasgow with sunshine, then I'm good with it. And you know, over here for some meetings, and everything's going really well. And yeah, all good. I always love I always love the attitude here in LA. There's a real sort of sure, why not? You know, which I just really. In fact, I was in a meeting the other day, and I sort of I left the meeting thinking, even as I was walking out the door, going, "When's he going to hit me with the catch?" You know, and it's just a cool place.
Brilliant! Thanks so much for being here and taking time out from your swimming pool to chat with us. I really wanted to have you on this series because you and I share a lot of things. We work in a very similar field in a very similar way, which we'll talk about later on. There's many things I know about you. One of my favourite quotes about you is you're famous for outselling the Dalai Lama, and I've heard he's still very upset about that. Quite an amazing achievement. So you're an extraordinary guy. I'd like to start off, as I often do, by asking, tell us one thing about you that most people probably don't know.
I guess the interesting bit for me is kind of where it started. I used to be an international runner, and that's really always what I saw myself doing. In fact, it's probably all I ever saw myself doing. And for me, it wasn't just a case of being able to run quickly. It was also the source of my entire identity. You know, I remember taking an incredible amount of pride and self-pride, self-worth in the fact that I could run faster than anyone else in the room. And when that was taken away from me, because I had 3 knee operations later, I had to retire. What I realised was not just had my running career gone, but my self-worth had gone with it. And that's really what got me into the field of personal development, was realising that, you know, I needed help. Because I was bloody miserable, and there was no way that through there's no way I could get back to doing what I'd done. That, you know, just that was gone, and so that's how I got into what I'm doing now. And the big lesson, I guess, was, you know, every time I got some press back in the early days when I started out, the press always used to start with this line: former international athlete Ali Campbell, blah 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 blah. And I remember, you know, a real exciting day for me was when they dropped the word the phrase former international athlete, and just went with life coach.
It seems to be one of those things, doesn't it, that particularly in our field I've noticed there's a lot of people who've come across a massive barrier and have got over it. Quite often that's not the case. People come across against an obstacle and just give in and give up. There's your story, my story, when I severed my hand and wasn't able to move it again. There's Denise Lynn, the other Hay House author, who was cycling along, got shot by an unknown sniper, who nobody knew why. She was attacked and she was left for dead on the side of the road, and obviously that was life-changing for her. And you were telling me a really interesting story about a guy you knew who was really down on his luck, living on the streets. He saw something in a bookshop. Maybe you'd like to tell us about that.
When I got into personal development, you know, I started reading all the let's call them the usual suspects, you know, for want of a better expression. You know, those with the best marketing campaigns in their for their book, not necessarily the best books. I met became a very good friend of mine. He was a radio DJ, and I did a segment on his show back in, we're going back 15, 16 years maybe now. And this guy, over a coffee one day, he just pushed this little kind of battered and torn book across to me, and he said, "Read this." And the book was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, which I still think is probably in the top 3 best self-help books that have ever been written, certainly for me. And I asked him, I said, "Well, what's this all about?" And he said, "Well, and you got to remember at this time that this guy, his name was Bobby McLennan, and he had the most successful talk radio show in the United Kingdom. You know, hundreds, if not thousands, of calls every night, and tens of thousands of listeners. And he said 2 years ago I was homeless, and he was living on the streets in London, literally, you know, cardboard box and in a doorway. And one day he was begging in the street, and he looked, and there was a charity shop across the way, and he saw in the window there was a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, and he thought, well, you know, if ever there's something I need, it's that. And it was like 25p, and so that day when he had got together enough for some food and a coffee and whatever, he made, you know, a 25p left over, and he bought the book, and he credits that with that book, or rather, I would say his application of that book. You know, the book in itself doesn't change lives. What you do with the book can change your life. And I still treasure that copy that he gave me to this day. And you know, Bobby went on. He continued his radio show for as long as he wanted to, and then he's now, I believe, in Thailand, living in a lovely house by the beach. So.
That's quite amazing. And as you and I know, one of the things I like about that story is that the book itself isn't where the change occurs. You know, there's lots of brilliant self-help books in the world, and it's not about having the biggest shelf of self-help books. It's actually reading it and putting it into action, which you and I know is so important.
You don't, Phil. It's just a waste of a damn good tree.